Edgar Dale and the Cone of Experience. How can teachers use audiovisual materials to promote learning that persists? How can audiovisual materials enable students to enjoy learning through precarious experience? These were two of the main important research and development questions addressed by an extraordinary educational technology pioneer, Edgar Dale. Although he is perhaps best remembered today for his often misinterpreted cone of experience, Dale made significant contribution in many areas as evidenced by just a few of the titles of the many books he wrote during his long lifespan in 1900s to 1988, including How to Appreciate Motion Pictures in 1933, Teaching with Motion Pictures in 1937, How to Read a Newspaper in 1941, Audiovisual Methods in Teaching in 1946, 1954 to 1969, Techniques of Teaching Vocabulary in 1971, Building a Learning Environment in 1972, The Living Word Vocabulary, The Words We Know in 1976, and The Educator's Codebook in 1984.
Background. Born in 1900 at the dawn of a new millennium, Edgar Dale's work continues to influence educational technologies in the 21st century. Dale grew up on a North Dakota farm, and according to One Year, 1970, he retained the no-nonsense thinking habits and strong work ethic of his Scandinavian forebears throughout his illustrious career. While working on the family farm and later as a teacher in a small rural school, Dale earned both his bachelor's and master's degree from the University of North Dakota, partially through correspondence courses. In 1929, he completed PhD at the University of Chicago and then joined the Eastman Kodak Company, where he collaborated on some of the earliest students of learning from film. Interestingly, although many of these early studies were experimental ones designed to compare learning from film with other media, they later experienced disdain from such studies, according to Devane and Butler, 1996. When Dale was asked why he did not do experimental research in which a scholar attempted to prove over and over that students learn from radio or film, he replied, "It always bothers me because anybody knows that we learn from these things, which is the media. There's no issue about that. Well, I suppose in any field, to be respectable, you have to do a certain kind of research." In addition to his own prolific.
Hello everyone, I am Alicia Binadilig, and today we're going to tackle about the influences. Although he traced his ideas back as far as Pestalozzi during 1746 to 1827, who pioneered the concept of learning through activity, and Froebel during 1782 to 1852, who first promoted the principle that children have unique needs and capabilities, Edgar Dale's work was most heavily influenced by John Dewey during 1859 to 1952. Dewey stressed the importance of the continuity of learning experiences from schools into the real world and argued for a greater focus on higher order outcomes and meaningful learning. In his first edition of Audiovisual Methods in Teaching, Dale expanded Dewey's concept of continuity of learning through experience by developing the cone of experience, which relates a concrete to abstract continuum to audiovisual media options. Dale in 1969 regarded the cone as a visual analogy to show the progression of learning experiences from the concrete to the abstract, rather than as a prescription for instruction with media. In the last edition of Audiovisual Methods in Teaching, Dale integrated Brunner's three modes of learning into the cone by categorizing learning experiences into three modes. The first one is enactive, which learning by doing, The second one is iconic, which is learning through observation. And last is symbolic experience, which learning through abstraction. What we have here is the figure of Dale's cone of experience. Dale's cone of experience is a model that incorporates several theories related to instructional design and learning processes. During the 1960s, Edgar Dale theorized that learners retain more information by what they do as opposed to what is heard, read, or observed. His research led to the development of the cone of experience. Today, this learning by doing has become known as experiential learning or action learning. Dale's cone of experience is a visual model that is composed of 11 stages. Starting from concrete experiences at the bottom of the cone, then it becomes more and more abstract as it reaches the peak of the cone. Also, according to Dale, the arrangement in the cone is not based on its difficulty, but rather based on abstraction and on the number of senses involved. The experiences in each stages can be mixed and are related that fosters more meaningful learning. In moving toward the pinnacle of the cone, from direct, purposeful experiences to verbal symbols, the degree of abstraction gradually increases. As a result, learners become spectators rather than participants. The bottom of the cone represented purposeful experience that is seen, handled, tasted, touched, felt, and smelled. By contrast, at the top of the cone, verbal symbols, like words, and messages are highly abstract. They do not have physical resemblance to the objects or ideas. As Dale wrote, the word horse, as we write, it does not look like a horse or sound like a horse or feel like a horse.
Good day everyone. I am Arlene Titikara from BPED 3A. So to this discussion, we will going to discuss the Edgar Dale and the cone of experiences. Dale in 1969 explained that the broad base of the cone illustrated the importance of direct experience for effective communication and learning. Especially for young children, real and concrete experiences are necessary to provide the foundation of their permanent learning. The historical importance of Dale's concretes in its attempt to relate media to psychological theory, according to Searle's 1997, and the cone has shaped various sets of media selection guidelines ever since. For example, influenced by Dale Briggs' 1972, the Line 8 General Principles for Media Selection, according to the age of learners, the type of learners, and the type of task. As noted above, Dale's cone has been frequently misunderstood and misused. Dale's cone is often confounded with the remembering cone or the bogus cone, Subramani 2003, page 27, which claims that the learners will generally remember the 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, 50% of what they hear and see, 70% of what they see, and 90% of what they both say and do. Even though Dale did not mention the relationship between the level of the cone and the learner's level of recall, many practitioners mistakenly believed that the bogus or remembering cone was Dale's work. A Google search reveals an astonishing number of attributions of the bogus cone to Edgar Dale. Molanda 2003 concludes that the so-called empirical evidence for the remembering cone appears to have been fabricated by the petroleum industry trainers in the 1960s. In addition to the confusion, the implications of Dale's cone have been misunderstood or misapplied. For example, Dale's cone has been used to maintain that more realistic and direct experience is always better. However, Dale in 1969 demurred, writing that too much reliance on concrete experience may actually obstruct the process of meaningful generalization. Page 190. Also, Dale noted that providing realistic learning experiences may not be efficient in terms of cost, time, and efforts. Instead, Dale suggested that the teacher should balance combination of concrete and abstract learning experiences. And that's the end of our discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Next, we have the experiential learning environment. In another book, Can You Give the Public What It Wants? Daly reiterated Dewey's influence on his ideas by writing, As I return to democracy and education, I always find a new idea that I had not seen or adequately grasped before. Dale described learning as a fourfold organic process which consisted of needs, experiences, incorporation of the experiences, and the use of them. Next, to promote the permanent learning of the students, Dale asserted that teachers should help students identify their needs for learning and set clearly defined learning goals related to their needs. A learning experience must be personally meaningful with respect to students' background and developmental stages, and the nature of the experience should be logically arranged to help students incorporate new knowledge with what they already have, and students should have opportunities to practice and try out their knowledge in real life as well as learning contexts. We have the effective learning environments. According to Dale, a learning environment or effective learning environment should be filled with rich and memorable experiences where students can see, hear, taste, touch, and try all the learning experiences. Next, we have Dale articulated the characteristics of rich experiences. Okay, in a rich experiences, he added that students are immersed in it and use their eyes, ears, noses, mouths, and hand to explore the experiences. Second, students have a chance to discover new experiences and new awareness of them. Third, students have emotionally rewarding experiences that will motivate them for learning throughout their lives. Fourth, students have a chance to practice their past experiences and combine them to create new experiences. Fifth, students have a sense of personal achievement. And last, students can develop their own dynamic experiences. Next, Dale believed that audiovisual materials could help students learn from others' first-hand experience or vicarious experience. So Dale claimed that audiovisual materials furnish one especially effective way to extend the range of our vicarious experience. He concluded that audiovisual materials could provide a concrete basis for learning concepts, heighten students' motivation, encourage active participation, give needed reinforcement, widen students' experience, and improve the effectiveness of other materials.
Although, as noted above, Dale did not advocate comparative media studies. He did recommend evaluating combinations of media and instructional materials in actual learning environments. Amazingly, Dale anticipated the direction of media research as if he had been privy to the great media debate between Clark and Kuzma. Dale recommended that researchers should look at the effects of combination of media in the environment where they will be used rather than the testing of single, isolated medium in the laboratory. By conducting research in real classroom, the varied combination of possible factors such as attributes of audiovisual materials, how to use them and administer them, learners' characteristics and learning environments could be examined because learning occurs through dynamic interaction among the learner, the context, and the media. Although the experimental methods of educational and psychological research were focused on testing the tenets of behaviorism and pitting one media against another throughout most of his career, Dale was prescient in his recognition that his complexities of learning render most such studies fruitless. So for the final remarks, Dale was much more than a scholar isolated in the ivory towers of academy. As described by Wagner, he actively fought for the better school, academic freedom, civil rights, and other causes long before these became popular issues. Dale also anticipated the still neglected importance of media education by promoting in the 1930s then radical notion that pictures should help their students to understand the effects of media on them, their parents, and society, and to learn how to critically evaluate the contents of the radio, newspapers, and films. Dale was a socially responsible researcher, a thoughtful humanist, and dedicated educator. Any educational technology seeking for inspiration for their work in our field would find no better role model than Edgar Dale.